Welcome back to the cleaner and more civil within reason. We respond to the comments we get, and a lot of the comments weren't that laudatory. I'm Bill Rankin, and with me is Bob Kerrigan, and but that doesn't mean we're going to pull our punches. There's things we feel strongly about. Maybe we'll try to be. Well, no, we won't do that either.
I think we started on a good note tonight with the mea culpa. I mean, when you just fessed up to being completely wrong, and it was just a really decent thing for you to do. I'm really quite
nice
proud.
Of you to keep reminding me of it.
I'm quite proud of you.
You reminded me of it twice before we ever went on the show. It's very decent of you.
It just had such a significant impression on me that a person of your stature and intelligence and all could just fess up to completely blowing something.
Okay. Now, this gets back to a principle that I think is really important. And the principle, and I think you operate under this principle too without articulating it quite as often as I do, and that is, you should, if you make your decisions, if your ideas are based on dogma, things that are revealed from above, from the party or the Bible or whatever, there's really no assurance that it's right or true. If your ideas are tested in the crucible, or in our case, shooting gallery of ideas, well, then an interesting thing happens. You sometimes find out you're wrong, and you amend it. And that's pretty good, you know. I mean, I've found out, this is just one of many examples where I've been criticized and have to agree with the criticism. Say, well, I was wrong about it. Well, that's part of any process where you'd like to kind of correct yourself, where you'd like to be right, where you believe in reason as opposed to dictates and dogma. That's got to be the process. It's got to be tested. You know your ideas are right when you're among people who criticize them. I think you never want to be a boss in a job where all the people under you are, oh, that's all, you're so smart and you're right.
You don't?
We encourage. And it works pretty well for us.
We don't actively encourage people.
Well, no, but we have some of our legal assistants in on discussions about how we're going to manage cases and how we're going to approach this person. Sometimes they say, well, if you do that, and we say, well, you're right.
Yes.
That's happened lots of times. It happened in a recent conversation where, first of all, if you're going to hire somebody, you might as well get their whole brain while they're there.
Right.
And we've got great people, and they've got good ideas, and a lot of times we say, that's a great idea. We're going to do it your way, because your way is better than the way we were headed. And, you know, let's get any further into the Pollyanna zone here.
Well, may I ask you a question about a good idea?
Oh, yes. Please do. Okay. I can't wait for this.
You're getting ready to go to the theater, and it's a movie that you and your spouse are looking forward to. But there's something about what goes on at the theater that's upsetting to you, and it's the popcorn. And it's the price of the popcorn.
Yeah.
And it's not just the price of the popcorn. It's the cheesy stuff they put on it that they call butter. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's not butter.
So, no, it's not butter.
What is it? Petroleum?
You don't even want to know what's in it.
I don't get that.
No, you don't. You won't even ask what's in it. So you tell your wife, this is what I want to do. And of course, if you have kind of a chauvinistic wife pattern with your wife, you tell her you pop the corn. So she pops the corn, and then you tell her you put the butter on the corn. Okay, you put the butter on the corn. Now you stuff it in your purse, and we'll go into the movie theater, and we will cheat the guy out of the revenue at the movie theater because we have the stuffed popcorn in the purse that I made you pop because I'm a chauvinist, told you to put the butter on it, and told you to put it in your purse. Is that a good idea?
No. It wouldn't work with my wife.
But you know that's your
although she might bring in her own stuff, she wouldn't do it because I told her to do it.
But you know that's what your governor candidate did.
I heard that, but I only heard it from you. Did you get that in a vision or something, or was that published somewhere?
No, that's from some of his closest friends. And you know, at Bain Capital, he was considered the cheapest person that anybody ever met
I heard
in
he
their
was a
life.
cheapskate, which isn't bad, but
that's beyond frugal. Can I tell you about the Perrier thing? Did I tell you about that?
I think you did.
I'll tell you again.
Tell it again. It's all right.
Well, he was at dinner, apparently, and there was this fancy French water. Perrier tastes just like tap water, but it's in a fancy green.
Oh, does it?
Bottle.
It's carbon. It's sparkling.
Well, okay, he gets a little sparkling in it. So he notices on the menu that it's quite expensive, and in fact, there's a gentleman over there, nicely dressed, and he's drinking the Perrier. So your candidate for President of the United States slips out, goes across the street to the junior food store, and picks up a 6-pack of Perrier and brings it back and saves a lot of money doing that.
Really?
Now, do you think that's a good idea?
That doesn't sound right.
It doesn't sound right.
Let me ask you about the movie theater. Is there something illegal about bringing your own popcorn in there? I mean, I just don't know. They don't want you to.
The Republican
but can you?
Oh, good analysis. Well, let's apply this test. I'm Mr. Smith. I own the movie theater.
Right.
Now, you ask me the question about bringing the popcorn in.
Yeah.
We're outside, and your wife, Sherry, has it stuffed in her purse.
You probably,
since you
own the theater.
No, I want you to ask me.
Well, okay, are you okay with somebody bringing food in from the outside?
Are you crazy? Why do you think we have this counter in here where we're selling this food?
Right.
What you think? Should we have a sign out front? Bring your food like it's a picnic? No, it's a movie theater, okay?
Because if you could bring your food, you couldn't charge these horribly inflated prices, Mr. Movie Owner, for popcorn, which costs about nothing, and you sell it for a lot of money.
Well, I'll tell you how we're going to end this conversation. You're not getting into the movie. Okay. That's how that would end. Okay?
Yeah,
I don't care if you are president.
I think you're right.
I don't care if you're running for president. You got to pay like everybody else, and don't stuff corn in your wife's purse.
I mean, since you own the premises, you can set the conditions upon which people enter.
See, the issue is, it's an issue of character. Would you do that if the guy that owned the theater knew it? It's sneaky. It's sneaky.
Right.
This is meant to sneaky. Okay, that's who we're going to be. That's what Republicans want to be president of the United States. A guy that takes popcorn.
Are you 100%? When?
I'm solid as a rock on this.
When did this supposedly happen?
Published in the Washington Post in an in-depth article, documented by witnesses, and nobody has refuted it. There's nobody in the Romney campaign.
When did this happen? Was this during high school?
No, this was much more recent than that. He was old enough to be telling his wife to pop the corn. How about that, okay?
That sounds kind of cheesy.
This all started
the fact that he's cheap doesn't bother me a bit.
Okay, it all started was this a good idea? So you want to go with what? You were trying to go in that direction, and I slightly detoured you on the popcorn.
No, I think what you ought to do is just don't, eat a little something before you go and avoid that unhealthy, overpriced crap, period. That's what I'm recommending.
Oh, so you're kind of a health food guy now, huh?
Well, certainly when the unhealthy food costs way more than it should, yeah.
What about banning trans fats? To really do something solid on health food. Do you want to? Are you up for that?
No, I am not for the nanny state.
You're not for the nanny state. Okay.
No.
Well, I just will see where you were drawing the line.
I'm not for telling people they can't buy big things of Coke if they want. Or banning. Trans fats are bad for you. Cigarettes are bad for you. A whole lot of alcohol is bad for you. Putting a pound of butter on your baked potato is bad for you. Loads of things are bad for you. This is America. Go ahead and do it if you want.
Do you think that this is helping solve the obesity problem in this country? That attitude that you just exhibited.
I think, is it the government's job to solve the obesity problem? You think?
Somebody's got to solve it, because we got to pay for the health care for all these fat people that are going to be in the hospital with diabetes. They're coming. It's like a giant parade of people, like a huge parade of people marching towards the hospitals.
And maybe that's what's wrong with the government paying for stuff. Because once the government says, well, you don't have a right to overeat anymore because we have to pay for obesity problems, so we're going to fix you. We're going to tax your food more, or we're going to weigh you. And if you're way overweight, you got to pay more for your health insurance. So we're going to do something to take care of you because we don't like that. There aren't many things you can pick on anymore.
No.
You know, in this politically correct society, you can pick on old white people and fat people, and they're at it, boy.
Well, you had some very interesting insights on a local race.
Yeah,
so
this is one of the advantages of being a registered Republican.
Yeah, because you get a lot of inside information from the truth
this
mill.
is about our local tax collector race, and Janet Hawley has been our tax collector. I don't know for how long, for a long time, and. She has an opponent this time, and it is Mike Whitehead, a name you might remember.
I do.
And I wish I could have brought this. I actually lost it, which is another mea culpa. So I get from Mr. Whitehead a great big postcard, which I think is just the most perfect example of political advertising because there's a purity about it. And the purity about it is there's absolutely nothing factual in there. There's nothing important in there. There's nothing in there that isn't misleading. It's perfect. It's really pure. And here's what he says. Well, Janet Hawley is a double dipper because she's retired from a state job and she's getting a pension of $60,000 a year or something. And she's a double dipper, which apparently worked in the Ernie Lee McGahey and Pam Childers campaign. Well, I don't know how you define a double dipper, but this isn't the bad kind of double dipper. She retired, she's entitled to her retirement pay. Win or lose, she gets her retirement pay. Right. This office pays a certain amount of money. You don't get bumped for longevity as a tax collector. You get whatever the statutes say, and sometimes these offices depend on county population, but it doesn't matter who wins this race.
Correct.
They're going to get the same amount of taxpayer money.
Correct.
So whatever you think about it, A, which of us would be entitled to retirement pay in a substantial amount and not get it? Nobody.
Nobody.
And two, understand that this example of double dipping is meaningless because every penny of that is going to be paid out anyway. In fact, Janet Hawley doesn't have taxpayer money put aside for her retirement. She's already retired.
Correct.
And Mr. Whitehead would. Now, here's what he says about her. There's nothing in there about her office. My experience with the tax collector's office is it's well run, they've got good employees, you don't wait too long, they do a good job.
Agreed.
What Mr. Whitehead says in his mail out is nothing to contradict that. He doesn't say she's doing a bad job. There's no scandal, there's no inefficiency, there's no wasted money, nothing. Here's what he says.
She turns money back at the end of the year. Do you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes, she does.
Well, Mr. Whitehead is a life member of the NRA. Now, how that's a qualification for tax collector, I couldn't tell you. And if you were, let's say there was no Janet Hawley. Let's say she was going to retire. And we had to, and you and I could appoint a tax collector. Well, who do you want for a tax collector? You want somebody beyond reproach who has never been involved in any ethical problems.
Right.
And would Mr. Whitehead be on your list?
No.
No, because he has had lots of ethical problems and has been found guilty of ethical violations in the past. Now, what he says is he doesn't think people ought to be in office that long. Well, he doesn't get to stay in office that long. He kind of gets out of it. I mean, you know.
You voted out. Yeah.
But he's always running for something. Yeah. I mean, if you are a politician and you're always running for something, and as long as they'll put you in office, you'll stay in office. And if you get term limited, you'll go somewhere else. Why is that better than somebody who stays tax collector a long time, has a great relationship with long-term employees, knows the job? So this mail-out says nothing of any substance and says nothing against re-electing Janet Hawley.
And every penny that she is drawing, she is legally entitled to get. That if Mr. Whitehead was elected, it would not only pay that same salary, but they would have to pay the state's match on retirement. So it actually would cost more, not a whole lot more. But the idea of this double dipping is something that it's sort of like, in a way, like tort reform. As soon as you mention it, people, whoa, boy, a double dipper. So wait just a second. A double dipper, does that mean a person that's drawing a pension from the federal government and the state government is a double dipper? To me, a double dipper is a person that is unfairly getting twice the benefits that they're supposed to get, or more benefits than they're supposed to get from the same source, or maybe even from another source. But there's a suggestion in it that it is illegal, and they're getting away with it. And you know, fair, whatever it is, Janet Hawley didn't do that, and we said that about Ernie McGahey, that he wasn't a double dipper. That issue was not involved. I think Mr. McGahey was defeated because he'd been in office long enough, and it was time to make a change.
So,
but I don't think it had anything to do with
But if you're out there and you're somebody who said, well, if I'm getting a state salary, I'm refusing my retirement pay, send us an email. I'd like to hear from you. Yeah. And what if she were retired from Monsanto?
Correct.
Would it matter? Why should it matter that she's retired from public employment? It shouldn't matter at all.
And the benefit is that since she's retired from the public employment, then she is not drawing retirement match during the period of time that she's holding over after she is elected to draw her retirement. And she's earned it. The one argument, Bill, I think, against this idea of drawing this retirement early, and it's an actuarial concept that I'm not really competent to express, is that you'll end up perhaps drawing retirement longer, okay?
If you retire early?
In other words, if you got out early, right, at that age and you just left, you would draw the retirement for the rest of your life.
Right.
But if you stayed for that next 5 years and then started to draw your retirement, you'd be 5 years older. You see what I'm saying? Yeah,
kind of.
Yeah, but it's not, it's subtle, but I'm just saying there's a slight change there that if you had to wait for that 5 years, well, I've decided I'm not going to retire this year, I'm going to retire 5 years later, it means that you're going to live 5 years less time, so you're going to draw retirement 5 years less.
If that's a problem, it's a problem in our laws. Everybody,
it is, yeah.
Everybody wants to maximize the money, well, with perhaps very few exceptions. How many people around here, when they're running for office, the first thing they announce, military retiree, I'm retired from the Coast Guard or the Air Force or something.
Yes.
And that's a benefit.
Yes.
What's the difference? You're retiring from basically the public sector, you're getting money from the government.
No difference.
And they're never considered to be double dippers.
No difference. So on that, just intellectually honest assessment of this, if we can, regardless you could be for or against Ms. Hawley or Mr. Whitehead, but it should have nothing to do with this, quote, double dipping.
Right.
Other arguments that she's been in public service too long, the voters have to decide when a person's been in public service too long, and then they vote those people out. I mean, it's happened to the politicians from Dempsey Barron to God knows who, and that can happen, but not on the basis of this double dipping. Yeah.
Maybe you should decide based on, is she doing a good job? And this kind of an office, she's not making policy. She's not. She's just
collecting
executing
money.
Policy.
Yeah, right.
She's just following laws and running an office. This is the kind of thing where longevity is really pretty good. Now, maybe if you've been collecting money from the people who, you're a legislator and the people are giving you money and their issues are coming up in front of you, maybe term limits make some sense there, but not our tax collector. You do what the laws tell you to do.
That's particularly true in the property appraiser race, because you have somebody in Chris Jones who, you talk about complicated, it's one of the most complicated. I've been involved in it to some extent. I've got to go to Chris now and then saying, what in the heck is this? How does this work? And he goes through the whole thing. And he's very patient, by the way, if you ever go down there and talk to him, to explain what's involved. So flipping him out of office for somebody who says they want to be a property appraiser, you have to be very careful about that. Because if you don't have, Chris had a lot of experience doing this in Tallahassee before he came back here. His dad had been, as you know, the property appraiser for years. But when Chris was elected here, he had a depth of experience in running a very sophisticated office in Tallahassee doing the same thing. So that's a really important job. I mean,
and these jobs get more and more complicated.
They are complicated.
The tax collector's office now is engaged in the real ID business. When you need to have your driver's license renewed and you have to show up with all kinds of paperwork. And this is something the national government foisted on us. You don't just renew your license anymore. Now you got to bring in your grandmother's thumbprint, or just all kinds of stuff. It wasn't too hard. It's not too hard for somebody who's stable. It might be hard for somebody who's moving around a lot.
It is. They've created a good deal of
impediment. But it is a long process. They'll make an appointment. In my case, there was a very knowledgeable, pleasant employee who we went through it and it got done. It was a pretty good experience. So every contact I've had with one of Ms. Hawley's employees has been very positive. I think they're good people who are doing a good job, and they're very pleasant to you.
All right, we're going to come back here after this short break and talk about a few other local items of interest, including what's included on your homeowner's insurance policy. All right, we'll be back here in just a minute.